Salvete! Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, Teilhard de Chardin, part 13, in which I'll pick up where somebody left off last time. And we'll read some Teilhard de Chardin, specifically the divine milieu. And we'll see what Teilhard de Chardin has to say today. And should be good. I hope everybody's doing well. Got some benzoin rocking here. If you'll pardon me while I get that started, just to set a little bit of mood here. Speaking of setting mood, Editor Edward, I trust your judgment. Would you play some music? I'm sure whatever it is, it's, I don't know, maybe appropriate or maybe just cool. Maybe so cool that he wasn't even sure that YouTube would allow it. And maybe, just maybe, it didn't. And so he had to do it again with something else. I don't know. Editor Edward, could you give us a little bit of insight about what it is that you're playing? It's the soundtrack to The Watchmen, the HBO series by Trent Reznor and Atticus Rose. Great fucking soundtrack, obviously. All right, now the mystery is solved for you.
Not me.
Thank you once again, Devo. You're always on point. Okay, never mind. Let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. So, okay, we're on part C. We read part A and part B already of the passivities of diminishment. Remember, perhaps, if you've been following along. Oh, if you would like to start, either start at the beginning of Teilhard de Chardin, Divine Milieu, or somewhere in the middle. Maybe you already saw the first one and you want to watch the second one. Maybe you've seen all of them except for 12 and you want to watch that before you watch 13. Whatever the case may be for you. All right, let's get started, shall we? Communion through diminishment. It was a joy to me, O God, in the midst of the struggle, to feel that in developing myself I was increasing the hold that you have upon me. It was a joy to me, too, under the inward thrust of life, or amid the favorable play of events, to abandon myself to your providence. Editor Edward, could you put the tree of life up for a moment? Could you make it transparent? Could you put it up here? Yeah, there we go. So, one thing about exoteric Christianity is it tends to identify with this. I mean, you could look at it a few different ways, but generally speaking, this is the physical body. This is what you would say is man, Malkut, right? And so this, when he says I, he's talking about this. And when he talks about Christ, he's talking about this. Tiferet has connection with God the Father, and indeed, through Yesod, this Malkut, right? So we're surrendering. Maybe to be generous, we'll say Yesod. Maybe if I've been pointing consistently, Yesod. By the way, for those on the audio only, hi, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm pointing to a standard tree of life according to fellow Jesuit. I'm not a Jesuit, but Teilhard de Chardin is a Jesuit. There was another Jesuit named Athanasius Kircher who put together the diagram that's currently on the screen. Just in case you're wondering, everything's above board here. Okay, So, I actually, when I was a youth, back in 2001, I think, made this particular illustration of it. I didn't invent it, or I just put a circle with a line and colored it. And actually, I took some liberties. This light blue for the path of the high priestess up here, I decided to make that a lighter blue, just for my own reasons. So there you go. It's a little bit different than... What was I talking about? Yeah. So if you call this I, or if you call this Yesod I, or if you identify with your own reason and desire and foundation, the astral triangle, the triangle of the psyche, of the sort of the human mind, what we would generally think of as human mind, like, going to the grocery store and saying, hey, how's it going? Hey, knock it off, that kind of thing. That level, not the, like, ultimate potential human mind, like bodhisattva consciousness. That's more like up here, more like Yeshua and, the ethical triangle, it's called. So if we identify this as I, or this as I, or maybe all of this Malkut and the astral triangle as I, then yeah, surrendering this and allowing it to dissolve and allowing this higher self to be in control, to at least have, the channels of spirit or water or whatever, the channels of energy running down from above and not blocking them with our own bullshit, Sometimes that takes a little bit of work in here, in the Kof, the path of the moon. The Jung stuff helps with that, going inward and meeting all the weird characters. I had one this morning. I woke up at before 6 a.m. and had to write it down. I did it, kind of in the same format, inspired by Carl Jung's Black Books, and met a character. And, it's one of those things where it's like, that might be useful later on in life, but it didn't, there weren't any solid conclusions to be drawn from it just now, but it might be step 1 out of 100. And for personal reasons, I'm not going to share the specifics of it, because it's the sort of thing that it's a personal process. Like the Black Books were a personal process for Carl Jung at the time. He probably would have shared it. I shared my dream, of course, with Piyu, but my wife, Priyal. And I might share it with 1 or 2 other people, but I'm not going to share it on YouTube. You understand. I hope you don't mind. What was I saying? Right. So if you, the divine name for the highest of the Sephirot is plural, the divine name is Eheye, which is commonly interpreted as I am, which you might know from the Bible. Eheye, Ashir, Eheye, right? Said the bush to Moses. And that gets translated as I am that I am. However, there is no actual way of saying I am in Hebrew. So it actually literally means I will be. It's a future tense, which is kind of like interesting, subtle difference, but a difference nonetheless. However, in English and other Romantic languages, it's commonly thought of as meaning I am. So let's just go with that. If you identify this as I am, ego is Greek for that. But in the Romantic languages like French, égoïste has come to mean like self-centered, and so the brilliant Freud, he had his moments, applied a very specific meaning to ego that relates again more with this astral triangle of self as opposed to this highest self, aka God the Father. So anyway, yeah, just to help translate for folks who aren't coming from like an exoteric Abrahamic perspective or an exoteric Hindu or any other perspective where there's the little tiny me, little lowly mortal me talking to the big immortal God in the sky. if that's not where you're coming from, then this is an easy way to kind of translate between the exoteric and the esoteric. And you might find that this isn't as alien as you thought it might be if you refer to this and keep this in mind when hearing this. It's what I do. Okay, continuing. Doodly-doo. Yes. Now that I have found the joy of utilizing all forms of growth to make you, or to let you grow in me, grant that I may willingly consent to this last phase of communion, in the course of which I shall possess you by diminishing in you. Now, if Gwydion were reading that, he would have made a lot of inappropriate comments about... never mind. But I, Frater BT, of course, am above such things. At times. Depending on what? I'm not sure. Anyway, after having perceived you as he who is, quote, a greater myself, and, quote, see, Teilhard de Chardin's on board. I think he's more on board than he sounds. He's behaving a little bit like I like to think, and the editors and translators of this Meccan Revelations that we also read here on Chicken Philosophy. You can find that playlist here. They're talking in a way that's not going to get them in trouble, but alluding to and pointing at and hinting at a deeper understanding of these concepts. He just referred to God as a greater myself. What did I just say? Right? Who does that? Does your priest? Anyway. Okay. Where was I? Grant, when my hour comes, that I may recognize you under the species of each alien or hostile force, not that kind of alien, that seems bent upon destroying or uprooting me. They have that in Tantric Buddhism, too. There's one of the... I wish I remembered his name, because that'd be so cool for me to just pull that out of my ass right now. But there's one of the forms of, I think, Vairocana or something like that, that's this, like, wrathful-looking, multicolored, being that if you are a good boy... basically, just sort of like lets you know, like, oh, hey, how's it going? Welcome. This is the next level. And you go, oh, thanks. And you pass on by. But if you're a bad boy or girl or gender neutral, whatever, doesn't matter the gender. If you're bad, whatever that means, then, yeah, you have a harder time dealing with this thing. I mean, this bodhisattva. Similar idea. Okay, so he's saying when I hit that stage that they call purgatory, or when I get to the burning part, my dad referred to it as dancing through the fiery furnace. When the ego is burned off, if you cling to the ego, then it feels like burning fire. But if you recognize that you are the being, capital B, then it's like dancing through the fiery furnace. So all different ways of saying the same thing, that there's something that happens when you don't have your body to separate you from the rest of yourself, right? That, sometimes you have to go through a process in order to get reabsorbed into yourself, whether it be the bardo or God or however you want to look at it, or however you want to label it and put boxes around it that ultimately aren't going to matter. They're just sort of a human feeble way of trying to wrap our chattering monkey brain around these concepts that go well beyond the ability of words to capture in anything but a metaphor that can easily be misinterpreted and gone to war over. So sometimes it's better just to stay silent. Forget I said anything. When the signs of age begin to mark my body, parentheses, and still more when they touch my mind, end parentheses, when the ill that is to diminish me or carry me off strikes from without or is born within me, when the painful moment comes in which I suddenly awaken to the fact that I am ill or growing old, and above all, at that last moment when I feel I am losing hold of myself and am absolutely passive within the hands of the great unknown forces that have formed me in all those dark moments, O God, grant that I may understand that it is you, parentheses, provided only my faith is strong enough, end parentheses, who are painfully parting the fibers of my being in order to penetrate to the very marrow of my substance and bear me away within yourself. Ora pro nobis nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Right? The more deeply and incurably the evil is encrusted in my flesh, the more it will be you that I am harboring, you as a loving, active principle of purification and detachment. The more the future opens before me like some dizzy abyss or dark tunnel, the more confident I may be if I venture forward on the strength of your word, of losing myself and surrendering myself in you, of being assimilated by your body, Jesus. Right? You are the irresistible and vivifying force, O Lord, and because yours is the energy, because of the two of us you are infinitely the stronger, it is on you that falls the part of consuming me in the union that should weld us together. Vouchsafe, therefore, something more precious still than the grace for which all the faithful pray. It is not enough that I should die while communicating. Teach me to treat my death as an act of communion. That's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Sanguis Christi. Cheers. Where was I? Okay, D. We finished C. Moving on to the D. True resignation. I mean, if your job sucks, then resignation can be a really good word. But if, there's something bad coming and you resign yourself to it, then it's a bad word, right? But Teilhard de Chardin is using it, no doubt, in a third usage, which, well, we'll let him say what he has to say. The above analysis, parentheses, in which we have tried to distinguish the phases by which our diminishments may be divinized, end parentheses, has helped us to validate to ourselves the Christian formula. Is so comforting. What? Let's try that again because that wasn't going to make sense. The above analysis, in which blah, has helped us to validate to ourselves the Christian formula, which is so comforting to those who suffer. Quote, God has touched me. God has taken away from me. His will be done. End quote. As a result of this analysis, we have understood how the two hands of God can reappear, more active and more penetrating than ever, beneath the evils that corrupt us from within and the blows that break us up from without. But the analysis has a further result, almost as priceless as the first. It puts those of us who are Christians in a position to justify to those who are not Christians the legitimacy of the human value of resignation. All right, go on. There are many, right? There is value to letting this get absorbed into this. I think that's pretty universal. Some may disagree, but I think they're just being contrarians for fun, like flat earthers, or at least the ones I know. All right, anyway. There are many reasonable men who honestly consider and denounce Christian resignation as being one of the most dangerous and soporific elements in, quote, the opium of the people, end quote. Yes. There is that level to it. If you look at especially popular world religions from the perspective of what benefit do those in corporeal, physical, monetary power gain from a populace that devoutly follows the philosophy, theology, way of life, tradition of this religion? If that's the question, you can come up with answers no matter what you're talking about, pretty much. And if that's the only question you have, then those are the only answers you're going to get, and then you will have your satisfaction of knowing that Christianity or Buddhism or Taoism or Islam or whatever it is simply a elaborate and complex tool by which the powers that be hoodwink the sheeple into doing their bidding. Congratulations. You can click away now. You can scroll away. There's really nothing for you to gain here. Good luck. Now that they're gone, let's continue. Next, to disgust with the earth, there is no attitude which the gospel is so bitterly reproached with having fostered as that of passivity in the face of evil. Yeah, don't turn the other cheek. Hit him back. Come on. But in your heart, turn the other cheek. The Buddhists have a good way of, dealing with that. That somehow, sometimes it's appropriate to act angry. Sometimes it's appropriate to yell or even to threaten in order to protect the innocent. If there's a barking dog, that's like rabid and it's coming up, sometimes you got to raise up a stick and say, hey, and the dog maybe, hopefully, will back off, right? Where if you just say, I will not lower myself to such a petty display of human emotion, and then you get bit on the throat and die, the dog wins, Am I making sense? All right. So in your heart, turn the other cheek. But with your fist, that's just my advice. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone but myself. Where were we? Yes. A passivity which can go as far as perverse cultivation of suffering and diminishment. Whoopsh, whoopsh. Those guys, the self-flagellators, right? I went through my self-flagellation phase, I admit. In like 2002? 2001? When was that? 2001 mostly, I'd say. Anyway. Where were we? Doodly-doo. Yes. As we have already said, with reference to false detachment, in quotes, this accusation or even suspicion is infinitely more effective at this moment in preventing the conversion of the world than all the objections drawn from science or philosophy. Oh, Personally, my objective isn't converting the world, so I'm not all that concerned with this part, but I'll keep reading. A religion which is judged to be inferior to our human ideal, in spite of the marvels by which it is surrounded, is already condemned. What marvels? Sorry. It is therefore of supreme importance for the Christian to understand and live submission to the will of God in the active sense, as we have said, is the only orthodox sense. What? Which, as we have said, is the only orthodox sense. Orthodox really just means correct. I mean, that's the meaning of the word. The people who say orthodox this or orthodox that, they're actually saying correct this or correct that, as opposed to incorrect, which is everyone else, right? Okay. No, if he is to practice to the full perfection of his Christianity, the Christian must not falter in his duty to resist evil. That's what I was saying. On the contrary, during the first phase, as we have seen, he must fight sincerely and with all his strength, in union with the creative force of the world, to drive back evil, so that nothing in him or around him may be diminished. During this initial phase, the believer is the convinced ally of all those who think that humanity will not succeed unless it strives with all its might to realize its potentialities. Okay? And as we said with reference to human development, the believer is more closely tied than anyone to this great task, because in his eyes the victory of humanity over the diminishments of the world, even physical and natural, to some extent conditions the fulfillment and consummation of the quite specific reality with a capital R, which he adores, as long as resistance is possible. The Son of Heaven will resist too, as firmly as the most worldly children of the world, everything that deserves to be scattered or destroyed. All right. I think I'm going to close there. We're still in the middle of D, right? In the middle of the D. But, well, you know, I'll finish it. Okay, all right. There's just another page of D, and then, so this will be a little bit of a long one, but we'll have finished something, so that's good. Should he meet with defeat, that rhymes, the personal defeat which no human being can hope to escape in his brief single combat with forces whose order of magnitude and evolution are universal, he will, like the conquered pagan hero, still inwardly resist. Though he is stifled and constrained, his efforts will still be sustained. At that point, however, it's pretty, I mean, that's a talent to be writing in French and yet rhyme in English. He's a talented man, I'll give it to him. Anyway, at that point, however, he will see a new realm of possibilities open out before him. Instead of having... Did you hear the trumpet of Gabriel just then? Holy shit. Oh, wait, that was the train. Yeah, it was just the train. False alarm again. Sorry. Where were we? Yes. At that point, however, he will see a new realm of possibilities open out before him instead of having nothing to compensate for and master his coming death except the melancholy and questionable consolation of stoicism. Yeah, I'll give him that. It's questionably consoling. Parentheses, which, if carefully analyzed, would probably prove in the end to owe its beauty and consistency to a despairing faith in the value of sacrifice. Oh, if this were a rap battle, that would have gone over everyone's head, but it was a good one. Bars. End parentheses. This hostile force that lays him low, and maybe it didn't go over everyone's head. I guess it was pretty clear, right? And disintegrates him, but was it the sacrifice of our Lord? Or just sacrifice in general? You know, the pagans make sacrifices. A goat, maybe. Sorry. Where were we? Doodly-doo. This hostile force that lays him low and disintegrates him can become for him a loving principle of renewal. If he accepts it with faith, while never ceasing to struggle against it. Oh, that's no fun. On the experimental plane, everything is lost. But in the realm of the supernatural, as it is called, there is a further dimension which allows God to achieve insensibly a mysterious reversal of evil into good. Leaving the zone of human successes and failures behind him, the Christian accedes by an effort of trust in the greater than himself to the region of suprasensible, I've never seen that word before just now, transformations, I know that word, and growth. His resignation is no more than the thrust which lifts the field of his higher activity. We're on the final paragraph of today's reading. And then there's the French editor's note. What? Why am I interested in that? Why would I care? Who's the editor? We'll read it next time, or someone will read it. Whoever's next. We have come a long way, Christianly speaking, from the just criticized notion of, quote, submission to the will of God, end quote, which is in danger of weakening and softening the fine steel of the human will. By the way, those who are familiar with the phrase, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, I guess that's a sentence, isn't it? Yeah, they're talking about the capital W will, as in the divine will, the will of God, the one on the tree of life. So it's sort of ironic that it sounds so contrary to this stuff when it's actually the same. Anyway, any Thelemites, do comment below. It helps the algorithm, engagement, and all that. Where were we? Doodly-doo. We must understand this well, because to find and do the will of God. Where was I? I'll just read that. We must understand this well and cause it to be understood, to find and do the will of God, the true will. And it harm none, do what thou wilt. The Wiccans almost have it. Sometimes you gotta harm folks. If it's the will of God, what if Joshua had been like, put the Canaanites, their feelings? I'm being weird, I'm sorry. Okay. Parentheses, even as we diminish and as we die, end parentheses, does not imply either a direct encounter or a passive attitude. I have no right to regard the evil that comes upon me through my own negligence or fault as being the touch of God. I can only unite myself to the will of God, parentheses, as endured passively, end parentheses, when all my strength is spent. Does any of this sound sexual to anyone else? Maybe it's just me. It's just me. It's just my dirty mind. Not that there's anything dirty about lovemaking, as long as it's within wedlock, right? Sorry. Yes, one paragraph can be a long thing when you stop to make silly comments every sentence and a half. Yes, endured passively, when all my strength is spent, right? At the point where my activity, fully extended and straining towards betterment, parentheses, understood in ordinary human terms, end parentheses, finds itself continually counterweighted by forces tending to halt me or overwhelm me, unless I do everything I can to advance or resist, I shall not find myself at the required point. You could try a rubber band around the base of the shaft. It's very tight. Sorry. I shall not submit to God as much as I might have done or as much as he wishes. If, on the contrary, I persevere courageously, I shall rejoin God across evil, deeper down than evil. I shall draw close to him, and at that moment, the optimum of my, quote, communion in resignation and, quote, necessarily coincides, parentheses by definition, end parentheses, with the maximum of fidelity to the human task. And that's today's reading. I hope you enjoyed it. And is there anything else? Nothing I can think of. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, assuming you're watching this right now. Although right now for you might not be a Tuesday. Whatever day it is, or night, I hope you have a good the rest of it. And if it's 11:59 p.m. or thereabouts, I also wish you a good tomorrow. In fact, I wish you a good tomorrow no matter what.